Unit 731. Japan's war crimes erased by Allies. They dissected people alive, unleashed plague bombs on unsuspecting villages, turning rural towns into silent graveyards. And they were never punished. Not a single tribunal, not a single sentence. This is the hidden story of Unit 731, a secret Japanese military program responsible for some of the most sadistic crimes in the chronicles of human warfare. But after World War II, the world's most powerful government ensured that the full truth remained buried beneath diplomatic silence. Because sometimes silence isn't an omission, it's a bargain. Birth of a secret lab. In 1936, in the puppet state of Manchukuo, deep within Japanese-occupied northeastern China, a shadowy military facility took shape under the leadership of General Shiro Ishii, a man obsessed with biological warfare. Publicly, it was a water purification unit, just another piece in Japan's grand colonial project. Privately, it was the nerve center of human experimentation on an industrial scale. Unit 731 became a sanctuary for unrestrained cruelty masked as science. It existed at the crossroads of empire and ambition, medicine and murder. Inside its barbed wire compound, doctors and soldiers transformed sterile laboratories into theaters of agony. Prisoners, known only by numbers, were subjected to brutal procedures in the name of innovation. It was not healing but calculated harm. Where Auschwitz had its gas chambers, Unit 731 wielded scalpels and syringes. The Empire demanded data. Unit 731 delivered it in blood. Crimes against humanity. Live vivisections were routine, victims restrained, no anesthesia, organs methodically removed, their reactions observed. To study frostbite, limbs were exposed to sub-zero temperatures until skin turned black, then thawed with fire or hot water. Observers documented how flesh split and nerves died. Diseases weren't cured, they were cultivated. Cholera, anthrax, typhoid and bubonic plague were injected into captives. Then, as fever raged and life ebbed, subjects were dissected alive to examine internal effects. No one was spared. Chinese peasants, Korean forced laborers, Soviet prisoners, pregnant women, children and infants still nursing. Some were tethered in open fields, used as test targets for biological bombs. Entire villages were infected. Researchers monitored spread rates, symptoms, mortality. These weren't crimes of passion, they were meticulous. Medical logs replaced confessionals. Microscopes became the eyes of executioners. Estimates suggest tens of thousands died, but precise numbers remain unknowable. Because Unit 731 burned the bodies, and with them their identities, they left behind ashes and silence. The post-war bargain. In 1945, as Japan surrendered and the Allied victors convened tribunals, survivors and observers expected accountability. The Tokyo War Crimes Tribunal began preparations. The world waited for indictments. But Unit 731's architects were never brought to justice. Why? Because the United States made a clandestine pact. In exchange for immunity from prosecution, General Ishii and his colleagues offered their vast troves of data on biological warfare. American intelligence deemed it a treasure trove. Invaluable was the official term. Despite Soviet demands to expose and try the perpetrators, Washington classified the findings and concealed the crimes. What might have been evidence in courtrooms became assets in Cold War arsenals. War criminals were quietly relocated. Some found prestigious positions in universities and government. The atrocities were rebranded as scientific breakthroughs. Human suffering became intelligence. Justice became leverage. Redacted from history. In post-war Japan, Unit 731 vanished from textbooks. Omitted, forgotten, or denied outright. Generations of students grew up with no knowledge of the atrocities committed in their name. A museum now stands in Harbin, China, where the facility once loomed, but its message is contested, its truth inconvenient. Nationalist voices still minimize the crimes. Others call them fabrications. In the United States, Unit 731 remained largely unknown until the late 1990s. Only when documents were declassified, when survivors dared to speak, did the public glimpse the scale of horror. Independent journalists, historians, and activists began to piece together a history that official archives had buried. Yet even today, the full extent remains elusive. The silence that followed was not passive, it was protective, and in many halls of power, it still is. Why it still matters. Unit 731 is not just a tragedy of the past, it is a moral reckoning that still haunts the present. It proved that war crimes can be bartered, that justice can be postponed indefinitely in the name of national interest, that knowledge extracted through pain can be prized more than the dignity of those who suffered. These are not questions confined to history. They echo today. What is the ethical boundary of scientific pursuit? When does research become a crime? And if knowledge is born of cruelty, can it ever be cleansed? The legacy of Unit 731 demands confrontation, because secrecy, when used to shield the guilty, doesn't just obscure truth, it invites repetition. Truth delayed is justice denied, and no amount of denial can erase the echoes of the dead. Some crimes escape punishment, not because they were unfounded, but because they were useful. And when information is cultivated through unimaginable suffering, who holds the moral compass to weigh its worth? Subscribe to Past Redacted, because if knowledge can be weaponized, so can the past. Next time, the 1953 Iranian coup, when democracy was overthrown in secret.